So we've just had Iceman's pack revealed with a brand new aggression archetype within his pre-constructed deck. It's all about putting upgrades onto enemies and interacting, attacking those enemies with upgrades on them. And I think that's really exciting. I'm really excited about these cards. I think they're very interesting. But we're going to be mainly framing this video just slightly through the lens of Cyclops and Valkyrie, two very different heroes, generally on different sort of sides of any given tier list or power rating. One is considered very strong, one is considered in need of a little bit of love in some situations, we'll put it that way. But Valkyrie, really likes to attack minions, really likes to put her own upgrade on minions, likes aggression. This could be her finest hour. So first up, we're going to look at Suppressing Fire. Suppressing Fire is a 0-cost upgrade attached to a minion. When you attack and defeat that minion, you get to heal 2 damage from your hero. I really like this card. I've actually, when I was actually checking the ruling to see, does this mean when you attack, only you can trigger it, but yes, you control it. So if you put this onto a minion and another player, defeats that minion, they cannot get the healing. But when I was looking up that ruling just to double check, I saw people had reacted to the reaction that me and Nelson did live to, seeing this card, saying I was too positive. I still like it. I still think this is a good card. Maybe not as good as my first impression, but still very useful. So this kind of compares to the other healing cards in Aggression, which I've got on the screen here, Moment of Triumph and Precision Strike. And Suppressing Fire at 0 cost is what I would call a 1 effective cost card. Because although it says 0 cost, when you play it from your hand, you have 1 less card in hand, and every card is a resource in this game. So basically, Suppressing Fire is effectively costing you 1 to play it. Precision Strike with a 1 cost, by that same logic, is now at 2 effective cost. So we can kind of break Precision Strike down into being 2 damage as half of its cost, and then 2 healing for the other half of its cost. And both of them need a minion to be on the board and then to be defeated to trigger their full effect to get the healing. So they basically both have the same kind of triggering condition. Now, Suppressing Fire doesn't say you have to defeat it, with a set amount of damage. But with Precision Strike, you've got this 2 damage it's dealing, and you have to finish off the minion or enemy, it could be the villain, with that damage. That is quite inflexible. Suppressing Fire, you can attach it, and you can attack with a basic attack, an event, or even an upgrade. If any of those things defeat a minion with Suppressing Fire on it, you will get the 2 healing. With Precision Strike, it has to be the 2 damage coming from Precision Strike. And there are some pros and cons here. Precision Strike can work on the villain if you defeat it with this 2 damage, which is going to be a very narrow window, but it's definitely possible at least once per game. Suppressing Fire is able to sit on the board. So if the minion survives for a turn, Suppressing Fire will still be there waiting for you to defeat it next turn. So in a vacuum, I actually think I prefer Suppressing Fire to Precision Strike, but Precision Strike will fit into decks more based around attack cards, but cards that want lots of cheap attacks, things like that. So there are pros and cons to both of these, which I think is really nice. Moment of Triumph is kind of the classic healing card in Aggression, and it is still really, really good. If you are playing a deck that does lots of huge attacks, Moment of Triumph is probably going to beat Suppressing Fire. If you're naturally doing overkill anyway, Moment of Triumph is, you'll get a lot of healing from that. But Moment of Triumph wants you to deal excess damage. It wants you to kind of go over what you need to defeat that target, whereas Suppressing Fire doesn't. So if your deck is around, doing smaller chunks of damage rather than bigger chunks, Suppressing Fire might actually be a lot more flexible than Moment of Triumph for you. So again, different pros and cons. If I had to, rank them, I'd probably give Moment of Triumph the edge, but I think all of these cards go in slightly different decks, which is, a really good spot for them to be in. Then we've got Blood Rage I've put on the end here. This is a new card coming in Magic's pack, which was part of the official, review preview for Age of Apocalypse. Now, this card causes you to take damage, and the other condition for all of these cards is you need to have actually sustained some damage for them to do anything in terms of healing. Now, Blood Rage is going to make you more consistently able to take damage, even if you're blocking every villain attack, which is just kind of helps enable them. Now, the timing here isn't great because Blood Rage is a response, Suppressing Fire is an interrupt. So if you defeat a minion and you want to trigger Suppressing Fire, but you haven't taken any damage, unfortunately, the timing doesn't work out where you can trigger Blood Rage first, then Suppressing Fire, because Suppressing Fire comes first. But very interesting card, really, really like this one. So let's compare it to some other upgrades we already have in the aspects. Gatekeeper is a very interesting card. It's turned out to not be very popular at all, but the numbers on it are fairly good. You could consider attaching it to a minion and giving that minion +2 hit points to kind of be as if, -2 damage on your next attack. But then removing 4 threat, I think, is very, very strong for the cost, and even with the minus, I still think that is good. But the problem is, you need the minion there, you need to defeat it, but then the threat is only being removed from the main scheme. And although a bit like Suppressing Fire versus Precision Strike, Gatekeeper will stay out on the board compared to some other forwarding options that run off minions, So if you could put Gatekeeper down, on one turn, then finish it off the next. I still think cards like Chase Them Down probably going to be superior to Gatekeeper in most choices. These cards would need something else, combined with them, perhaps a new archetype to really elevate Gatekeeper. So I would say Suppressing Fire better than Gatekeeper. Marked, I would also say Suppressing Fire is a card I prefer. Marked, of course, goes in very different decks that kind of tend to do those big excess damage. So Marked probably likes Moment of Triumph a little bit more if you go for that. But being a zero cost card that just adds a keyword, I just think it's tricky to fit into decks and get used. Whereas Suppressing Fire, giving you that healing, I think that's just really solid and, kind of consistent. Then we've got, the leadership, the protection, and the justice ones that came with Cyclops' pack as well. Coordinated attack, pin down, and befuddle. I don't think there's any real direct comparison here. Not only is it a different aspect, but even in multiplayer, I'm looking at these. One is about making allies take less damage. One is about keeping minions around, not defeating them, unlike the aggression ones which want to defeat them. I thought it was interesting to just showcase all of these aspect upgrades you can put onto enemies. So the last thing I want to talk about for Suppressing Fire is just how it interacts with a couple of heroes. Now, Wolverine and X-23 like to spend their health for bonuses, which makes their health worth more than most characters' health, and they take damage more than most characters as well, so they're often going to be able to get healed by this, and the healing it provides will be worth more. So I think Suppressing Fire will be very good for both of these characters, who generally fall into the Minion Slayer kind of role in multiplayer, and it's just kind of their specialty. They're very, very good damage characters, put it that way. Now, you do need a minion out to benefit from Suppressing Fire, and that's where heroes who can summon minions will really shine. We do have Looking for Trouble and Angela in the aspect to summon minions, and these might have some benefit here. Looking for Trouble with new art does come with Iceman's precon as well, but for my money, this is going to go much better with Thor and Valkyrie, who can draw cards off of their ways to summon minions. Thor from his passive sort of hero ability, and it's actually printed on Valkyrie's card, and she gets to choose a specific minion, which I think is very powerful. So she'll make sure whatever comes out, she can defeat immediately and get the healing of Suppressing Fire. So I do like those options for them as well. And then we've got Cyclops up here, who has Optic Blast. You spend one resource to deal 3 damage to an enemy with an upgrade attached. Suppressing Fire and Optic Blast is a kind of a combined total of 2 effective resources for 3 damage and 2 healing, which is really, really good. And of course, Suppressing Fire is a tactic, which Scott loves because he can find it with his Ultra Ego ability, as it's an upgrade as well, and he can also find it with Tactical Brilliance. Then we have Surprise Move, which is a 1-cost event. It's a tactic as well for Scott, but not an upgrade, but it's a hero interrupt that when you make a basic attack against an enemy with an upgrade attached, you get +2 for this attack. If the attack defeats an enemy, ready your hero. Now, this is a really interesting card that, in a vacuum, or should I say, if everything lines up, this is ultra efficient. A ready for your hero is normally costed at roughly 1 resource cost or 2 effective resources. So this is kind of right on the money for what you expect for a ready. But then you get the +2 attack as well, kind of as a bonus on top. So it's kind of like Skilled Strike and Ready to Rumble, or Skilled Strike and Battle Fury, that kind of thing. So this is really, really good. However, what I've come to realize is you have to jump through a lot of hoops to make this lined up, which is why it is costed so effectively. And in hindsight, I actually don't know if this has enough bonuses. So the way this works is that, a bit like with the Suppressing Fire, you first need a minion to come out, which is fine. A lot of aggression cards do, it happens. It's pretty common in multiplayer. All these cards will be a little bit better in multiplayer than solo, just because more people on the board means more encounter cards, means more minions. But you need a minion, then you need to put an upgrade on it, then you need to be ready to basic attack, then you need to defeat that minion. But here's the thing, you also need to have Surprise Move in hand. So you need a minion, an upgrade, Surprise Move, be readied up, be able to defeat it with the basic attack. And even if you defeat it with a basic attack, you might miss out on that +2 attack if your attack is already enough to defeat that minion. And if you're building around using your basic attack, you probably have a good basic attack anyway. So that is definitely possible against a lot of scenarios and modular sets. So long story short is, a lot of things have to line up all at once, and certainly upgrades last for more than 1 turn, minions can sit on the board for more than 1 turn, but generally that is the last thing you want as aggression unless you're running a Bring It deck. But I think Bring It, Upgrade, Surprise Move, you're starting to put a lot of different pieces together that's going to really, reduce your space in your deck for other things you might need. It's going to be maybe not so cohesive in my opinion, so I think that's pretty tricky. So this is a card that needs very consistent upgrade placement to really pay off, in my opinion, and someone who really wants to basic attack. Now, I've put the other upgrades on the screen that trigger this from aggression. We will look at some of the hero ones in just a moment. And I've also got Hand Cannon. One way to make sure you don't lose the bonus from the attack, just completely, is to give yourself some kind of overkill. So marked is obviously an option, but also hand cannon, if you're making a basic attack, you can just get the overkill on that basic attack. And then surprise moves +2 attack isn't wasted, even if you're hitting a 1 HP minion. So that's pretty nice. So with the upgrades from heroes, the original we have is Spider Tracer from the core set on Spider-Man. Now, I don't think he loves basic attacking because he likes to defend quite a bit, but there are definitely times where he will basic attack, especially with Warrior of the Great Web. There's kind of an interesting little mix there, but generally I'm not sure he's going to love this card. I think it's going to be okay. Deathglow from Valkyrie. Now, we're really hoping Valkyrie will get some benefit here, but unfortunately, Deathglow and Surprise Move basically do the same thing. They both ready Valkyrie, so it's kind of non-compatible. Now, Cyclops can put a lot of different upgrades out. He has them very consistently in hand, so I think in theory that could be nice for Surprise Move. Priority Target in particular, a very, very good card to put on a minion and then defeat it. The problem is, Cyclops really doesn't like using his basic attack. All in all, I don't really see Cyclops having room for this in his deck when he has so many fun X-Men toys and all sorts that he can use extremely effectively. Then we've got Touched from Rogue, and putting Touched on a minion gives Rogue overkill, as we can see toward the top of the card text here. And that is really, really useful because you kind of get that hand cannon, that marked kind of benefit, but Touched is kind of free to attach. It's really low commitment, it's not in your hand, it's always available. So anytime you have Surprise Move and there's a minion from the encounter phase, you're going to be able to put Touched on that minion and get overkill when you basic attack it, which is really, really good for it. You're always going to be ready to use. Now, the downside here is if Touched is on a minion, it's not on the villain. So Bulletproof Bell is offline. Probably her strongest card, is extraordinarily efficient. Also, if Touched is on a minion, Touched isn't on an ally or other player, which means Superpower Adaptation, probably her most fun card, and I would say second most powerful if I'm honest here. I think there's some crazy combos and really good efficiency you can get from, careful deck building or careful, team choosing. Touched isn't going to be able to do that either. So you're missing out on Bulletproof Bell and Superpower Adaptation if you're consistently putting Touched onto minions, which I think is kind of a bad plan to build around. So I don't really like this on Rogue either. Now, Puncture Wound, kind of, if you just look at the maths of having put a zero cost upgrade on and then using Surprise Move for X23, I think it can be really good because she can pump her attack stat up quite high, quite often. The problem is trying to get this in hand at the same time as Claw Mastery to pump her attack stat up, and then have that minion out to Surprise Move as well. You're basically needing basically need 3 cards in the same hand, I would say, to really efficiently do this. And that's not really that great. But what's even worse is Puncture Wound is so good on its own that although the maths of a zero cost upgrade and then a Surprise Move for X23 looks really good, Puncture Wound probably just better on its own, if I'm really honest, in most situations. So X23 could enjoy this card along with maybe Suppressing Fire, but it's maybe not as good as you might have thought on its own. And then we have Frostbite from Iceman, the new hero. I think this will be really good with Surprise Move because he can put this out really easily. So of the hero attachments, I'm going to have to give the prize to Frostbite for being the best with it, in my opinion. And I think it will go pretty well with him in builds that go into, basic attacking and things like that. So I like this for Iceman. Everyone else, it could be good for X23, but you're going to need things like Suppressing Fire to make it actually consistent and worthwhile. But a lot of hoops to jump through, guys. And then we have Take That. And I was really excited for this card initially. Maybe not as excited as the other ones, but I really thought this had potential. Big attacks generally are pretty rare in aggression, especially outside of, hone technique kind of stuff. So just being able to deal 7 damage with one card that anyone could use, I thought was, really interesting. But the problem is this upgrade attached business here. So this archetype really relies on having, the right enemy, the right upgrade, and then the right kind of thing on top of that to do. And that is kind of the downfall and everything that's the main thing you'll have to consider when deck building and playing the game, how to make all those things line up. And for Take That, I think that's very tricky. So dealing 7 damage to an enemy is often going to be too much for a minion. There are not many minions with 7 hit points. It's like 6 is even fairly rare. It's a bit more common, certain modulars, certain enemies. But generally, 7 damage is excess damage. And you might think, oh, Marked is going to be good here to get you overkill. But then, if we're going by the effective resources thing again, we're paying 5 effective resources for 7 damage, which kind of takes us back to uppercut levels of efficiency, and it's playable, but it's not something I'd want to build a deck around and put multiple cards that have to come together at the right time to achieve. So even though Marked will kind of preserve the damage as overkill, I don't love it. Suppressing Fire, you'll definitely get your healing, but it's, again, you're just doing way too much damage for most minions. Then we have Gatekeeper, and I think this is kind of the best match here, because Gatekeeper is actually adding on hit points. They're going to make enemies from lower hit points actually go to 6 or 7 hit points, which is going to take that actually really nice. If you consider the +2 hit points from Gatekeeper kind of a -2 hit points from Take That, you're really getting a net total here of 5 damage dealt and 4 threat removed for a total of 5 cost. But the problem is you still got to line all these things up, and Gatekeeper still only targets the main scheme. So I find them a little bit lackluster in general here. So Take That is going to take some convincing for me. Now, I do think with Hone Technique, it is really fun. To Take That being a 7 damage and free cost becomes 10 damage. 10 damage for a free cost card for effective, is pretty nice. But you're going to have to set up Hone Technique, and then you're going to have to get into the right situation and upgrades and things to use Take That. So the interesting thing about Take That is that although the aggression upgrades only attached to minions, Take That can deal damage to an enemy with an upgrade attached. An enemy. So you can use Take That on the villain, even though the aggression upgrades cannot go onto the villain. If the villain did have an upgrade from a player somehow, one of the hero ones perhaps that we've been looking at, then Take That could target them as well. And I start to like that kind of space. I do wonder if the phrasing here means maybe there's one more upgrade coming in Iceman's precon. I've not done the maths and the numbers, but maybe there's an upgrade that could attach to a villain and have some kind of benefit. Maybe it really actually rewards Take That. Perhaps there's some kind of good combination here that will uplift this card when they're used in unison. So we'll have to wait and see for that. I'm not too sure about it, but it's something I thought was curious and worth pointing out. Then we've got Shark Girl, and I love Shark Girl. I think what a silly character, but I don't know. It's just I'm going to be putting Shark Girl in a lot of decks just because it's Shark Girl. But 2 cost, 2 attack, 2 hit points. We don't talk about the forwarding guys. But what we have here is the X-Men trait, which means Utopia and attack training and game time are all online with that attack stat and things going on there. So that's really good. Any 2-cost ally is good for X-Men with Utopia, just as a cheap ready on top of basically whatever else they do. So that's already good. But Shark Girl has a really, really fun ability. When attacking an enemy, she gets +1 attack for each upgrade attached to that enemy. Now, what that means is, if you're Iceman, you can get up to 6 stacks of Frostbite on one enemy, which means she could be dealing 8 damage from just your hero kind of upgrades alone. But that is going to be kind of rare, a little bit of an outside thing. I think more realistically, across most characters, and even Iceman to some extent, she'll be dealing 3 to 4 damage just from her 2 attack and maybe 1 or 2 upgrades you've put out there. So I think she's fun. I think she's going to see a lot of use, especially in X-Men decks, again, with Utopia and attack training. I think with attack training and even game time, and a couple of upgrades from your hero or even from aggression, I think you're going to get a ridiculous amount of damage from her. I really think she is excellent. But of course, she goes best with Cyclops. Scott can have X-Men allies from any aspect, so he can be running leadership with Uncanny X-Men and get Shark Girl, which is slightly silly because now Shark Girl is a 1-cost ally with 3 hit points, and Scott sure has a lot of upgrades he can attach to enemies. So, you can put Exploit Weakness on, and now you've got this 1-cost ally with 3 health, which is dealing 4 damage to that target. It looks very good in how this will work out. Going forward, I do not see a single Cyclops deck with Uncanny X-Men, which I think are all of his most powerful decks, really, not running Shark Girl. Too good. It's kind of absurd in my opinion. I think this could be better than people expect. And of course, Shark Girl being another 2-cost X-Men ally means if you're playing an X-Men hero in aggression, you now have access to 5 2-cost X-Men allies. Angel is 3-cost, but if you have the right traits, aka being an X-Men, it will be 2-cost. 5 2-cost allies with the same trait is very, very rare, so I think that is pretty nice. And then we have Keep Up the Pressure, which I really like. I've seen some people grumble, oh, maybe it's not good here, maybe it's not good in multiplayer. No, I think this card is good in a lot of situations. So it's 0 cost, which is already really good for a player side scheme. And it needs 2 threat per person, which is also really good for a player side scheme. What it does is each player can search their deck and discard pile for an attack and add it to their hand. Then you get until the end of the round a +1 damage bonus to all your attack events. So you're basically trading a 0 cost card and 2 forwarding for an attack card. Now, this might seem like a poor deal. You're like, oh, I'm trading 1 card to get 1 card, and I'm having to remove 2 threat. That is the solo, calculation. But not all attack cards are built equally, and an attack card at the right time is very powerful, especially when it can be not just an aggression attack, but a signature, hero card attack, But if you've got multi-aspect thing going on or in multiplayer, you can get attacks from other aspects, which is really interesting. Now, I think compared to keep them busy, it's a much better player side scheme. Compared to lock and load, it's applicable to many more characters. So I do think keeping up the pressure is going to see a good amount of play. I do like it, but it's something you're going to have to plan around, build around, watch the timing for. But if you do, I think it's going to surprise people in a really good way. So obviously we need to talk about Cable, Mr. Side Scheme. He's going to play this for 0, fought it for 2. Now he's got an attack in hand that he's found to keep up the pressure. He's readied up with his response. He now has the same amount of cards in hand. He's still ready, but now he has a new side scheme in the victory display to power up all of his stuff, and he has +1 damage on whatever the attack event is in his hand. So already that is insanely good. I think Cable runs this card in almost every deck, in almost every aspect, with maybe some exceptions for multiplayer if people really aren't running any good attack events, but I don't see that happening too often, so I like this for Cable. Just from a solo's perspective, if it's in the late game, you have some other side schemes already in the victory display, grab Telekinetic Blast, and now Telekinetic Blast has the benefit of keep up the pressure being in the victory display, and the +1 damage from, the effect of keep up the pressure being defeated. So you can just grab Telekinetic Blast, which you only have a couple copies of. It is very convenient to be able to grab it, and you can potentially just finish off the game. Let's say you have 4 side schemes in the victory display, keep up the pressure is your 5th. Now Telekinetic Blast is doing 11 damage, +1, 12 damage. So that's really valuable. But maybe it's earlier game, maybe there's a minion out, maybe you got this on turn 1. Well, you can just keep up the pressure, get your side schemes up, and then get to defeat a minion, because now Turn the Tide, you can trigger it from keep up the pressure being defeated, and it will deal 4 damage. So we've got some really fun stuff there with Cable. Now we can look at it in aggression itself. Now, like I said, not all attacks are equal. If you are running a Hone Technique deck, and you can use keep up the pressure to just summon Dive Bomb into your hand, well, that's good. That's good in multiplayer. I don't tend to love Hone Technique / Dive Bomb in solo, but if you are running it, that's still very good. And again, multi-attacks in general, attacks that hit multiple enemies, do benefit from that +1 event damage on most of their attacks. So Dive Bomb will hit all targets with an extra +1. 1x1 will hit both targets with an extra +1. So will melee, and so will a lot of hero attacks, such as these. My favorite use is actually with Cyclops here, with Ricochet Beam, in terms of at least the multi-attack hero cards. So you could have a sequence like you put out keep up the pressure on the board ready for the right time. Now, you happen to be an alter ego when you draw Ricochet Beam. Well, maybe you then use your alter ego ability to grab Exploit Weakness. You then flip down, use your basic forwarding to defeat the side scheme, get another copy of Ricochet Beam, your second copy. Now you can put Exploit Weakness on the villain. Now you can Ricochet Beam. Now you can Ricochet Beam. And you've just done 20 damage. Then you can use your Optic Blast ability to deal 4 more damage. It doesn't benefit from Keep Up the Pressure's +1 attack bonus because it's not an event, but it will benefit from Exploit Weakness. Now, the total cost here is going to be about 9 effective resources, but you have done 24 damage, but also any allies on the board or any other players in the game are going to be able to benefit from Exploit Weakness as well. So 2 of those resources are getting a lot more benefit. So it is very, very strong, I think. So we also have some other things we can do with this. So looking at Gamora, she often plays a lot of low-cost attacks, which means the +1 damage bonus from defeating Keep Up the Pressure is going to get a lot of mileage. You're going to get a big damage turn. However, the best use is maybe with Decisive Blow. So you could do something like use Clear the Area to thwart Keep Up the Pressure, and this is a card she has access to in every aspect because she breaks the aspect barrier. She has a special deck building rule, which I actually just talked about in a podcast I released with Nelson, all about multi-aspect heroes. So if you're interested, you can always check that out. But effectively, you thwart down the side scheme, Keep Up the Pressure, and you choose Decisive Blow. Now, Decisive Blow is online because you have used a thwart event this turn, and getting a 2-cost card to deal 8 damage is pretty nice. Another character I like it with is Deadpool. He's got 2 thwartings, so in solo play he can just, destroy that side scheme, and he has some really spicy attack events which combo in crazy ways. Now, I'm assuming most of you guys by now know the maximum effort this card is fire combo. Use maximum effort to lose all your HP, deal massive damage. Then while you're at, that 1 remaining hit point, this card is fire. It's going to deal damage equal to your missing HP again. So if you have just the basic 9 hit points and you maximum effort and this card is fire, you're dealing 16 points of damage, which is pretty goofy if you're doing it with some help from Keep Up the Pressure to make sure you got both in hand at once, because his alter ego ability can kind of generally find the other one if you didn't happen to draw one already. Now you're getting 18 points of damage, I believe, for that combo, which is very, very good. Next up, I want to talk about Wolverine again. So he's got Berserker Barrage here, and what's really fun here is that this is a repeatable ability. So if you get the +1 attack bonus from Keep Up the Pressure, and whether Berserker Barrage is in hand already or you get it from it, Berserker Barrage is now dealing 5 damage to an enemy. If you repeat it, it's still dealing 5 damage to an enemy. It's not maybe the best, because I don't think there's a lot of times you'll have enemies which need 5 damage instead of 4 damage that you want to keep repeating it on, you know, but I do think it's really, really fun and probably going to be something people will enjoy. Then we have Sliding Shot from Star-Lord. Now, +1 damage on this is, you know, whatever. This card does tons of damage normally when you're using it anyway, but this is going to help you with a game-ending combos. If you're ready to end the game, you have maybe lots of Daring Escapes to stack up encounter cards. You then want Sliding Shot to get all that extra damage from those encounter cards being there. What if you don't have a Sliding Shot? Or what if you have the resources to play 2 Sliding Shots, but you only have 1 in hand? Defeat that side scheme, keep up the pressure, grab yourself another Sliding Shot, +1 damage on every attack. Why not? Let's go, Sliding Shot, boom. That's a good way to end games as well. So I would say Keep Up the Pressure is really good for ending games, and it's really good for people that play lots of attacks. Lastly, for Keep Up the Pressure, I want to talk about Miss Marvel and Nova, some champions. Miss Marvel can use her Morphogenics response to bounce an attack card back to her hand. So even if you defeat Keep Up the Pressure with no attack cards in hand, she's going to be able to basically play an attack card twice to get the bonus damage twice, which I think is really fun. And again, not all attacks are made equal, so if she uses Keep Up the Pressure to get a really good attack, she can play that really good attack twice with the damage bonus. So I think that's very, very fun. And she also has Bruno Carelli. Now, if we look at his Alter Ego action, you can attach a card to him, and then its normal action is you can exhaust him to add up to 3 cards from him to your hand. Let's imagine a world where we attach 3 attack events to him. Then let's imagine a world where we use Keep Up the Pressure, defeat it, get an attack event, exhaust him, get 3 attack events from him. Now we have a minimum of 4 attack events in hand. We can bounce one back with Miss Marvel, so maybe 5. We can potentially make 5 attacks with the boosted damage from Keep Up the Pressure. The big challenge here would be trying to afford all of those attack events. You'll probably want cheaper ones, but I think there's definitely going to be some kind of exploitable combo here. Maybe it's not going to be top tier, but it's definitely going to be very fun. I'm really excited about trying that. Then we've got Nova, who he's already good at playing lots of attacks in a turn. He has a lot of resource generation. He does like a lot of attacks to trigger things like Unleash Nova Force, which is every time he defeats an enemy or removes the last threat from a scheme, he gets to ready and draw a card. When he uses a basic power from being ready, readies up his helmet, generates a resource. So the more he can defeat, the more readying and card draw and resource generation he gets. So it's a very, very nice little combo. Player side schemes in general work well with him because he can defeat them for another trigger from Unleash Nova Force. Because he gets all that card draw and resource generation, he can keep playing a lot of attacks. Really nice little package there. Now, he can, of course, just take Dive Bomb, which I think also likes this. And, you know, his hone technique came with him for a reason. And then if you remember back to the start of the video, I was really looking to see who benefited more, Cyclops or Valkyrie. You know, what are they gaining from this? And I think you guys know that Cyclops destroyed Valkyrie here, as you can see by this highly detailed piece of art I commissioned for a lot of money. So now I still think Leadership will be Cyclops' best deck by far, best aspect, but Shark Girl can go into that, so hey, that's even better than before. And now his aggression builds, which are actually some of my most favorite and fun builds for him, are going to get really strong and crazier. 2 more options at least. I think that's very, very fun. And Valkyrie, I don't think is going to see any significant changes from this. I am really hoping there's something still in Iceman's pack that also functions with upgrades on enemies that is going to help uplift her. I really think this would fit extremely well, so fingers crossed on that front. But otherwise, yeah, it's poor Valkyrie. So yeah, that's the end of the video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you want to see more, please subscribe. Let me know in the comments which is your favorite of these cards. I think they're all really interesting cards. I definitely think Suppressing Fire, Shark Girl, and Keep Up the Pressure maybe a little bit better than Surprise Move and Take That, which I think are going to be very niche, but still maybe get some use in certain decks, which is nice. I think at this point in the game's health, you know, it's been out for a while. We've got a lot of expansions. Not every card has to go into every deck. But yeah, that's kind of where I am with this. I thought they were really fun. I actually still, you know, power and whether I'm going to use them aside, I think all of these are really fun. I think Marvel Champions is in such a good space in terms of where the design is at and going in that respect with creativity. Really, really happy with this. Thanks, guys, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.